Even up there in YouTube land, Dan here from GeekCast Radio doing another comic book haul video. And I know this is coming out much later than most of these. Well, I say that, and there's been like 3 of these, so I don't know if there's really been a consistent pattern as of yet. But I was at the beach for a week, so I got really far behind with many things, including comic book reading and getting reviewing. Now I'm back and trying to catch up for time lost. So a lot to talk about, a lot to catch up on. But for right now, I'm just going to go through some of my recent pickups. Won't get into any really spoilers. Most of these books I haven't fully read yet, but I will hopefully be doing some fuller reviews on some of the books I feel like are warranted to deeper discussion. But I'm actually going to start with some back issues I picked up most recently with Mr. Miracle 1 and 2. Yes, this series has been out for some time now, and I didn't start collecting this when it first came out. I only started getting physical books again within this last few months. I was purely digital, but I was going back and recollecting this. I had everything but issue number 1 and issue number 2, but I found both of these. This is the second printing of issue 1, and I think the first printing of issue 2. And I was like, wow. And I was happy to see it, so I picked them up. And I didn't have to spend like $8,000, as most of these are on eBay now for that much. So I have everything except for the issues that have yet to come out. And I mainly got it because I want to be able to read it as a whole when it finally ends. I've been really enjoying it a lot, and I'm excited to see what it all kind of comes to with. And I think it has got 3 more issues left. Something along those lines. But I also got a book from the Dollar Bin. And before I get into some of the more recent books with Wolverine and the X-Men, number 1 this is from 2014. This isn't the Jason Aaron one. This is the Jason Latour. And I actually planned on getting more of this series because they had like the first 10 issues or so in the Dollar Bin. I'm like, I can pick up the first 10 for $10. That's a good deal. But unfortunately, the box I was looking at, apparently the store cat also wanted to be in that box as well. And as you know, when it comes to cats and fighting them regarding box space, it's a difficult challenge. So I lost that battle, and I kind of just gave up. And I guess I'll just get this one and walk away. But yeah, I don't know why a comic book store needs a cat. I mean, there's worse things, I guess, but just kind of weird. I'm like, this cat's on the box, and I'm just, all right. He's just going to bite me for trying to buy a comic. I get that. I guess he really wants, maybe that was in his pull list, and I don't know. I wasn't going to fight a cat. Not again. Not after last time. That's for sure. But some other books I picked up when I was at the beach. There was a comic book store nearby, so I picked up some that I didn't get at my local store because their shipment was late. And that was Spider-Man, Spectacular Spider-Man Annual number 1. This isn't a series I've been keeping up with regularly. The reason I picked this up, though, was because I'm a huge fan of Mike Allred, and he was doing this book, and I really I read this already and really enjoyed it. Great J. Jonah Jameson story, just showing why he's such a fantastic character, just the many dimensions of it. And Allred doing the Allreds, I should say, because Laura Allred also colors this, and she adds a lot to Mike's art. It's a perfect aesthetic for something like Spider-Man, because that 60s style fits a character like Spider-Man, who can sometimes be stuck in that time frame. And I really wish that we got more Mike Allred. He does some Marvel books here and there, like he did an Infinity War storyline issue not too long ago. But the last really consistent book he did with Marvel was Dan Slott's Silver Surfer one, which was amazing. But he hasn't really been on anything consistent from Marvel. He had the Bug series for DC. I think that's ended. But I'd like to see him kind of do a more consistent book for Marvel. I think he's actually got, if I'm not mistaken, something coming up with maybe Boom. I'm not sure, but I'm a huge fan of Allred, which is kind of funny because when I first saw his art, I think with that book Ecstatic in the early 2000s, I hated it. I just didn't like it at all. But I grew to kind of tolerate it, then enjoy it. Now I just love it. As I've become more, I don't know if it's an acquired taste, as they say, or I've become a better comic book reader and be able to appreciate art. I tend to like art that is unique and does things differently. Like if I feel like your art looks like for the artists that came out that same week, I tend not to be all that excited about it. But someone like Mike Allred, there's only really one Mike Allred. There's no one else that kind of has his style, has his technique. And when him and Laura Allred get together, it can be really a lot of fun. The other Spider-Man book I picked up was Amazing Spider-Man 801, Dan Slott's last issue. And 800 was the first Spider-Man comic I bought in some time. and I thought, you know what, I might as well buy 801, and ended up really enjoying this book. This was like, I think, the best way to go out for Dan Slott. It's a great evergreen story where, sorry, there's a glare there, where this is kind of a book that will work now or work 20 years from now, 20 years ago. Just kind of encapsulates what's great about Spider-Man. And Marcus Martin on this art. I love the homage to Amazing Fantasy 15. That was a lot of fun. So it's a great way for Slott to go out. Now we're kind of gearing up for the new fresh start with Nick Spencer coming in very shortly. Excited to see what he'll do with the title. I did like his little snippet we got in the Free Comic Book Day issue. If it can continue that, I think Spencer could work with Spider-Man. I like sometimes, Spencer, depending on the character, like I really enjoyed his Ant-Man run. And I could see if you kind of just morphed that a little bit and made some adjustments, you could really make that type of storyline work in Spider-Man. And he also did Superior Foes of Spider-Man, so he's got experience with that world. So I'm thinking that I think he's a good choice. I know there's a lot of people who hate him because of what he did with Secret Empire. I don't know. I think people get bent out of shape with that type of stuff, but I think he does have talent as a writer. So we'll see how that goes. The other back issue or issue from a few weeks ago that I picked up was Doctor Strange #2. I did like issue #1, but not enough to add to my weekly poll. But I thought I'd pick up issue 2. I did like issue 2 about the same. So it's still kind of in the status period where I don't know if I want to add it or if I do or don't. We'll see with issue 3. It'll probably be the tipping point for me. But it's got some good concepts. There are some problems I still kind of have with it. But overall, I think it has potential. I think it just depends on where it's going to go for issue #3. So we'll see. I think that's coming out next week or the week after. It's hard to tell with books anymore. I feel like some are weekly, some bi-weekly. It's insane. But now to get into this week's books. Speaking of Spider-Man, with Venom #3. I'll be doing a full review of this, but I've enjoyed issue 1 and issue 2. I think Donny Cates has come on strong with Venom as it was expected, but so is Ryan Stegman, really. Cates has been doing his thing, but I really think the person that's been shining the most has been Stegman's art, at least with the first 2 issues. So big cliffhanger where it left off in issue 2. We'll see where it goes with issue 3. But, as someone who's never read a Venom book consistently, this is the first time I've really kind of been excited to read Venom. So Marvel's doing some things right, and that's, putting creators in interesting titles like Donny Cates on Venom is somehow working. Speaking of creators on interesting characters, we have the Sentry, #1 that came out with Jeff Lemire and Kim Jachinko. I pronounced that incorrectly for sure, but I'm a huge Jeff Lemire fan. He is my favorite writer right now in comics, and I know a lot of people hate the Sentry, and I get it. I get like he's too powerful or whatever, but I actually kind of like the Sentry when he first debuted in New Avengers. I'm a sucker for that archetype of that really powerful character that has to try to balance power and that responsibility entails. And then with Sentry, gets upped ante even further because he has this void that will potentially wreak as much havoc as depending on his power level, basically. So he's legitimately his own worst enemy. And to me, that is a great framework for a Jeff Lemire character. So we'll see. I think, Jeff Lemire does Golden Age characters really well, as we've seen with Black Hammer. He's doing a Fantastic Four book with the DC right now with the Terrifics, and people said he's doing a Fantastic Four book for DC and a Superman book for Marvel. But I'm curious to see what his approach to a character like the Sentry, who showed up again in Donny Cates' Doctor Strange run, and I like the approach that took. So I don't know if that's going to tie into that or not. We'll see. Also coming out this week, Thor #2. With more art from Mike DeMundo, who again is, I guess, one of those artists that some people don't like. I really like the energy. I like artists that have personality. I like cartoony style. It's not necessarily what I would first like. This look is not what I would think. Jason Aaron run on Thor, especially his Mighty Thor run. I wouldn't necessarily think this style, but I kind of like the fact that this Thor run is coming out and with a different approach right off the gate. It's very fun, very energetic. So we'll see where it goes. And it's been kind of crazy. So Jason Aaron knows Thor. He's been writing it for some time now, and it's been the consistently Marvel's best book for, I don't know, last 18 years or so. Also coming from Valiant, we have a hard title to say, Harbinger Wars 2, number 2. I liked the first issue, but actually like the prelude issue more than I liked the first issue, mostly because of the approach they're taking with the character of Livewire. I felt like the protagonists are set up to be not that very sympathetic with things they were doing. So Exo Manowars coming into this, we'll see how that's been going. But I really tend to like what Valiant does with their big events. Their big events tend to be at least small in the sense of it. They don't take over every book, or when they do, it at least makes sense. And they don't go on for 18 months. They tend to be, I think this is only 5 issues or so. So it's not a great starting point if you're not a Valiant fan. Like if you've not been reading Valiant, you should jump into Harbinger Wars. Probably not going to understand some of the bigger points, but I would say, if anything, check out Secret Weapons that came out last year, because that has a lot to do with at least the first 2 issues of Harbinger Wars number 2, much more than Harbinger Wars actually has. So if you're curious about jumping into some Valiant. Also coming from Marvel, we have Multiple Man number 1, and I picked this up for one reason, because it has Matthew Rosenberg, who I feel like is one of Marvel's up-and-coming talents, like Donny Cates. 4 Kids Walk Into a Bank was a great series. I liked what Rosenberg's done with things like Kingpin, which was a book that was much better than it had any business being. His Punisher run's been a lot of fun. And I've seen some previews of things he's been tweeting out, and kind of like the approach of this book. I've never really been a huge Jamie Maddox fan, but I kind of think it could be kind of cool and different. And sometimes if you put a good writer on an oddball character, good things happen, like Tom King on Mr. Miracle. Not saying this will be to that level, but I think, to me, it's not necessarily the character that gets me interested in a comic. It's the creator behind it, in 99% of the time, minus Cable, which is a book I'll read just because I like Cable, even though he's not that great of a character. It's just, I guess, nostalgia that keeps me coming back for more. This next book is one I just kind of was walking around the shop and like, that looks kind of interesting. And it's Mickey Spielman's Mike Hammer number 1. And I know absolutely nothing about this book, but I love pulpy crime stories. And so this is basically like that in a purest form, just like that classic noir, Maltese Falcon type of story. So it seemed like to have that type of approach to it. So I thought I'd try out the first issue. It's done by Titan. And I honestly, this is a well-known property or at least a previous property that I know nothing about. There's so many properties out there nowadays, but Titan's done some fun things with some of their property stuff, like Fighting American. It's been a really good book. And I used to kind of turn a blind eye to Titan, but more and more I've been enjoying things. Even like a book like Hookjaw that came out last year, which is this crazy shark story, ended up being quite fun. So Titan's a publisher I think is kind of proving itself more and more as years go on. Last but not least is my lone DC book this week, which was the Man of Steel number, 5 of 6. This is a series that I've been unfortunately far behind on. I think I've only read the first 3 issues. I need to catch up. As I said, I've been on vacation. I didn't want to bring, and unfortunately, unlike Marvel, DC doesn't give you digital codes, so I don't feel like bringing physical books on a trip. One thing that does bug me about DC is I don't get, why do you not give digital codes, or why you give that for the first issue and then that's it? Kind of drives me bananas. Like, why do that? Like, that's just really annoying. So now I just have one book, even though I own 5 of them in my Comixology library. Just kind of, I know most people don't care about the digital codes, but I tend to read things digitally most often than not. So, but anyways, I've enjoyed at least the first 3 issues for the most part, and I'll be continuing with it. And I do plan on continuing it when it gets into Superman number 1 and actually Comics number 1. I'm actually really excited about the idea that one of those books is going to focus more on Clark Kent as in his work at the Daily Planet, because I love journalism and stories about it. So that kind of is right up my alley. And I'll be like, Superman as a character is appealing to me much more this year and these last few years than like even someone like Batman. I don't know why that is, but the endearing quality of Superman, I find myself much more interested in reading than a Batman book. And yeah, I've been enjoying Tom King's run, but just the idea of Batman in general is just something I'm not as excited about as I used to be. just, I guess, the idea of a character being able to terrify these criminals, it just seems more and more very juvenile, not juvenile, but the approach of it is not as appealing to me as a character that tries to be more uplifting. I don't know if it's just because of everything going on in the world that I find that much more approachable as a book than Batman. But we'll see. But that's why I kind of enjoying what Tom King has been doing with Batman, because he's been approaching it differently and trying to look at the character and not in a context that's beyond I'm this scary dude that likes to punch people in the face. So I find that much more intriguing than your typical Batman story, which maybe some people don't. But those are the books that I picked up this week. Be curious to see what other people are reading. What are you picking up next week? I know next week there's going to be some midnight releases with the wedding happening and Captain America and things like that. You're going to be celebrating the 4th of July at your local comic book store. I might be. I don't know. We'll see. Be warned that my next haul might be a week late again or a few days late again, as the holiday is just making things kind of crazy. But if you want to hear more from me, my rambling, you can check out my podcast, Comic Concierge. You can check out GeekCast Radio. But for now, remember that comics are for everyone. The key is finding the right one. Until next time, thanks for watching.